What's going on, YouTube? Southern Comic Geek coming to you with another comic book haul video. With me going live, I know in the past it'll be put up there if you're subscribed to the channel in particular, if you're looking for live videos. And it just doesn't seem that YouTube has been doing that as of late. And so for that reason, the last couple of videos that I've done have been pre-recorded and put on there. Yo, Discovery Bay, what's going on here, man? I'm glad you popped in here. Just got some comic book hauls for today. The big one coming tomorrow. And so for those of you who have been keeping up with my comic book huntings, as it were, and completing certain big runs, you know, or can guess what that last book that's coming tomorrow is going to be. I also have a sketch cover art coming from 38 Chambers Studio, and so looking forward to getting that, and we'll share that with the community when it comes in. And so it's definitely fire. Thank you, Discovery Bay. Appreciate that. As you know, a lot of the live shows haven't been showing up. I noticed JP's Budget Collecting, Two Brothers, and several other folks were not showing up like they have previously in the past. Agu Ramos, thank you for popping in, doing the little lurking thing, as Perry is known for. And Rod the Rican, yo, what's up, Rod? You done got you a new logo there, man. Stepping up the game in the world. Rod, I need to ask you, let's see, I'll figure out what Daredevil that is to see if you have it. I got it in my Comic Tom Mystery Mail call, and I'm not a Daredevil collector, and so if I can let somebody else in the community enjoy that book a little bit more, then I'm certainly willing to part with it. So yeah, just Two Brothers hooked you up too, man, getting a little comic karma around the room and around the world. And if you hear the screaming in the background, that's one of the many children that I have, the next to the youngest one, it sounds like. And so the terrible twos, as they were. But so yeah, so today was New Comic Book Day. Unfortunately, as all the channels that are out there, I'm sure, have already stated, it's going to be the last New Comic Book Day for quite some time. Of course, I have my thoughts on that, and I'll probably ramble off on that soapbox later on, but I've got my ideas. Yeah, hashtag, kid life, right? But let's dive into the new comic books. And so I picked up the Marvel free premieres and looked at all the books that might or might never come. So these were all the premieres of a couple, 2, 3, 4 issues ahead that may or may never. Yes. Thank you, Disco, for popping in here and giving me the old thumbs-a-roo up. So Amazing Spider-Man 42. And so this continues the zaniness of Spidey and Boomerang. Last couple of issues been picking back up for me. Really reminds me of old school Spider-Man. So really appreciate that. Dig me some old school, just zany, corny, Spider-Man. The only thing that make it better for me is if he was back with Mary Jane, and they can undo that one more dreadful day decision that Marvel made all those years ago. Also been picking up X-Men and Fantastic Four, issue number 3, the Brooks covers. And so I got the other 2, and I'm assuming that it connects all 4. If this 4th one ever comes, who knows? But if it does, I plan on picking it up. It's been a pretty good read. The only problem with it is that it's kind of a retro story, and so it's back before all the issues with Marauders, and spoiler alert, but Kitty Pryde is supposedly dead, and all that kind of stuff takes place. And so it's pre all that, pre Kitty and pre Kitty actually going off and being a Marauders and getting the tattoos on her knuckles and all that kind of bad stuff like that. So and then also picked up Once and Future number 7. Didn't realize that there was a Jenny Wilson cover on this. If I had I would have ordered it that way. My shop does not normally get Once and Future. It's not a big seller for them. And people haven't latched onto that series. I kind of came late to the game, but fortunately was able to go to another shop that had a plethora of back issue new comic books and was able to pick all of the first 6 issues up at one time. Also got giant-sized Nightcrawler and And of course, this is a one-shot. Story was okay, just okay. I mean, I could have done without it. I'm kind of a Nightcrawler fan. He's pretty straight-laced character, um, so on and so forth. But I pretty much like Nightcrawler. But this was just kind of an okay story. I could have done without it, really, to be honest with you. Hellions #1. The only reason I picked it up was because it was the first issue of an X. I don't know if I'm going to continue it on, but if you like Marauders, this is kind of the vibe I'm getting from Hellions and how that's going to go. I don't know if they're going to continue Marauders. Probably depends on the sales, but the Hellions kind of reminded me of that. The ones that are a little on the darker side of things. Havoc, which has in the past given those tendencies out. Mr. Center, Psylocke, people like that on this team, and we'll see how it goes from here. I did not pick up the one in 200 or 500 variant that was out there, the orange cover, although that would be cool. I don't know how many shops are going to go out there and get it, or the Hulk one that is purple. Although again, it's a pretty cool color. Really, I don't know. Star Wars Bounty Hunters #2. Kind of digging this. It's kind of a slow start here, but anytime Boba Fett, potato, tomato, tomato, side of the world you're on, and but anytime he's involved in something, good things are bound to turn up. Good things for the reader, not so much for his enemy. And these a whole bunch of bounty hunters getting in there, and I guess he's going to have to show them who's the toughest one of them all. X-Men War #1. Valiant Comics is probably the most wasted property in my mind of any of the big comic people. So let me explain. So Marvel, DC, they got their faults. They don't do everything right. So don't get me wrong there. But they've got a lot of big properties to them, and they milk those properties for what they're worth, whether it's merchandising, whether it's movies, whatever the case may be. They sell a lot of books, or at least they did before this whole Corona deal. And so they do a lot of stuff. They got a lot of intellectual property to play with. Valiant is actually the third largest connected superhero universe out there. Don't know how much that means anymore, but I was always been a big Bloodshot, Eternal Warrior fan. When they brought Valiant back in 2012, I wasn't back collecting comic books at that time, but I was still reading digital, picking up the occasional trade, and really liked mostly the way they had took the characters. So that kind of fell apart, and now Valiant's changed hands again. Bloodshot, Rise going good, but I was kind of wondering about X-Men War. And the problem is the leadership at Valiant is more along the lines of a social justice warrior. I really picked that up when I was buying the Visitor comic book. Picked up the first 4 issues. Really didn't want the last one, but the guy had already put it in my box, so I committed to him. And just kind of, whatever. And it's like, just tell me a good story. Give me some good art. You got some good IP. Run with it. Why waste it? Why try to rewrite the wheel? If it was good then, make it good today. So I kind of hesitated on X-Men War. Here it comes out. Liked it back in the day. This last run that they had, I was kind of iffy on it. But this first issue was pleasantly surprised. And I don't know if it's maybe because I kind of set the bar low in my mind. The expectations weren't that high. So when I read it, it was like, it was pretty good. The paper quality seemed to be a little bit less. Unlike what Marvel and DC like to do, they didn't bump the price just because it has the #1 on it. So that was good. But it was kind of different because I was used to the old X-Men War. Then in the 90s, there was no banter back and forth between the suit and him. The suit just did what he did. He had the ring. If the ring was on his hand, he was good. He went about his business. Now the suit has developed some kind of AI, type banter back and forth between them. Seems interesting though. And so I'm probably going to, provided new comic books continue to come out, probably going to continue to pick it up as long as they stay true to the character. I think that's pretty good and a safe bet. Because the thing with Exo Manowar, he's kind of like a mixture of Conan with Tony Stark, right? He's got the suit of armor, so he's kind of upscale that way, but he's from old 14th century. So, he's in this time, so he's a guy out of his time. So it makes sense. And so the first issue was pretty good. So we'll pick up the next one, provided again it comes out. Wolverine #2. This continues the story, the first half of Wolverine 1, which was kind of crazy to me because they had the one story which really didn't make any sense. And then they put the Omega Red story, which actually to me was the better story in there. Omega Red with the vampires and all that kind of stuff. That was pretty cool. So I don't know if they're going to pull a New Mutants vibe with this book and have that storyline take place one issue and have this storyline take place another issue, or if they were just kind of setting the stage up for maybe Omega Red having his own deal later on. I don't know. But unfortunately, they didn't have that Omega Red part in this book. It's related to the latter half of that first story in #1. Art was better, or the art was still good, rather. The writing was better. The story's kind of making sense. Still don't know what's going on, but you can kind of follow along a little bit better than bam, you pop up and none of this has been connected to anything that's been going on and all the X titles that Wolverine's in, and you're like, what in the crap is this? It's just like they dropped you in the middle of a story and you looked around and you didn't know what was going on. So this kind of builds off of that #1 and continues to grow on that. So it looks like they're moving into their own. Percy's been doing a good job, and I believe he writes X-Force, so he's been doing a good job on that book. Always been a fan of Kubert's writings. Drawing. And so I'll continue to pick it up again if it provided it comes out. So hate to see this one come to an end, but the old saying is that all good things must come to an end. That's not true in comic books, because if it sells comics, they're going to bring it back. You can rest assured. Sean Gordon Murphy was killing it in this series and the one that preceded it. He's doing the writing. He's doing the drawing. The dude's doing it all. And these killer covers like this Joker right here. Spoiler alert, by this issue, Joker is not with us anymore. And that was kind of the other deal. It's refreshing when you see these Elseworlds. I've always been a fan of the what ifs and the Elseworld type stories, because they can take those characters that you know and love and just kind of shake their world up a little bit. It's not long lasting. It doesn't have to, go this way from issue 600 to 700. It's just inside this one little story or storyline miniseries. And then you can move on back to the character you know and love. And maybe you appreciate the character, that has all the story and the history. And it's like, well, okay, well, it could have been worse. So let's keep going with that. But the Curse of the White Knight continued on the story that Bruce Wayne finds out that he's not really a Wayne. Azrael, or John Paul Valley, is actually the Wayne, long story short. So he's killed all these people. He's killed Joker. He's killed, well, he didn't kill Joker technically. I guess Harley did. Again, spoiler alert. But John Paul Valley's going around killing all these people. He's fixing to die. So he wants to go down in glory. And Batman wants to stop him. He's going to go after him. He's going all full guns a-blazing in. He don't care. He's going to kill him. He's ruined his life. He's going to take no prisoners. And Dick Grayson, Mr. Boy Scout himself, steps up and says, hey, look, I know you messed up. I know you were a horrible father, but you were my dad. And I was like, wow, that really hit home. Because at the end of the day, kids or your parents, they were bad, but they were yours, right? So it's okay for you to talk bad about your parents, but don't let somebody else talk bad about yours. And so that was kind of Dick Grayson's deal. It's like, hey, I know you were horrible, truth be told, you were horrible, but you were my horrible. And so if you're gonna take him out, but do it Batman style. So that's what he did. Instead of blazing him down, he goes off in a sword fight, takes him down, and Batman wins the day, seemingly going to jail. And so it's going to be interesting. I guess they kind of left it open to continue on if they want to get back into it. A lot of the villains are dead now, so they'll have to come up with something new, which would be interesting. But it seems that Harley Quinn and Batman have somewhat of a thing going on. She's willing to, at the end, do something, as not to not spoil it, because this is a new book, as not to spoil it, but in the end, she's willing to do something for him. And he said, no, I've done ruined enough lives. You go live yours. It'll be okay. We'll get together type deal. And so she doesn't do what she was planning on doing. But good read. Can't recommend it enough. Go out there and get it and take a load of that art and writing. So, Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 44. In the past, I've kind of wondered if I was going to drop this series. It's kind of picked back up now that Artemis and Bizarro are back with Jason. And I like the dynamic. So, like the Dark Trinity, okay? We know we got Batman, we got Wonder Woman, we've got Superman, and we've got all these people that they've got their moral code, and that's that. Okay, well, let's take on the different side of the thing, the anti-hero, which seems to be the bigger thing nowadays. It seems that people connect more with these anti-heroes because Superman, and maybe this is Bendis's problem because he's trying to make him something that he's not. Superman is a character, and here comes some of my soapbox rantings, but Superman's a character that you look at and you go, wow. He's got all this power, and he's an alien, and he's more human than what some of these other people are. In the Elseworld stories that came out not too long ago, when Lois Lane became the Eradicator, that was one of the things she said. You've had all this power. How did you not just blow the whole world up? She couldn't understand it. And that's his struggle. It's himself, being able to stay above the fray. Kind of like the same thing with Captain America. And I understand that it might not be as fun to write about a Boy Scout, but in a world where political partisan bickering cannot even be quenched by something called the coronavirus, when you can't even talk to people without getting into an argument and not realize that you have more in common than you have not in common. In a world like that, it's nice to see. Exactly. It's nice to see a Boy Scout like Captain America or Superman maintain their pose and say, all right, if everything else in the world falls apart, I can depend on these characters. Bendis doesn't really like that. Bendis is trying to take this whole new turn on Superman, and Superman is not one of those characters you can do that with. Okay. Bendis has had his marks. Ultimate Spider-Man, I believe, is Bendis's best work, but he worked with inside the character. He updated Spider-Man to the 90s or the early 2000s. He updated the character, but he didn't really leave the character's vibe. And with Superman, I don't know what he's planning on doing. And I ain't got no clue as to why they continue to let Superman decline. This is your major book, or one of your major books, and certainly one of your major characters. And you're letting a guy kill it just because he's a big name. Screw Bendis, get rid of him. That's my thoughts, my 2 cents worth, right? Anyhow, so I like the take on the Dark Trinity, the anti-heroes, and so Red Hood, like the art. I usually get the B covers, but this one was pretty good, so I went ahead and got the A cover on this one. Red Hood fan. Helps that he has a really good first name. So, for whatever reason, I forgot to get X-Men 9. So luckily at my comic shop, it's still open, and they have a whole bunch of them, and should have one next time I go in there, which is a story I guess we'll get into now. So with the deal of Diamond, a lot of shops are going to find themselves in quite the squeeze, with new books being their primary source of income. And a lot of shops, these Magic and the Gathering tournaments and Warhammer and things like that are a big part of their income. That's going away, right? There's a shop in Jackson, or there's one here locally too, that their main thing is the Magic the Gathering part. They're going to wish they had back issue comics now, because what else is going to draw people to your shop? You're just going to shutter the doors. You still got to pay rent. You still got to pay light bill. What are you going to do? Lay people off? Probably. So they're in a big quandary. The shop that I normally go to, they've been there for a long time, and they've got a big pull list, which has helped them through rougher times. But when no new comics come in there, they still have the back issues to fall off. They don't have a really big space. They don't, time and money into the Magic the Gathering deal. They are what they are. And luckily for them, the shop owner is kind of feeding it because he's a fan, not so much that he needs to make a whole bunch of money. So that's fortunate for them. So I was talking with the guy that was working there, and they were trying to figure out ways that they could get out there and be innovative. I said, look, you don't have to leave your first love. You don't have to do something different. But reality is that you do have to adapt. The dinosaurs should be roaming the earth today. There's no way that a caveman could have taken down a dinosaur. But the reality is, when things slightly changed, they didn't have to change. They could still be the huge reptilian creatures that they were. But when things changed a little bit, they didn't adapt and therefore they became extinct. So you don't have to go the way of the dodo and you don't have to completely reinvent yourself. You can simply do things slightly different and take advantage of a situation. And of course, the situation being that his competitor shop is a shop that has nothing but new issues and solely relies on this Magic the Gathering stuff. Well, those two things are going to go away. So what is that? What are they going to do? And they got some heavy rent where they're at. So I'm telling him, man, you need to take advantage of this. You need to be putting sales out. You need to be putting flyers out. He talked about maybe doing reduced hours, but they were still planning on staying open. And I told him what I plan to do and what I hope others will do that are in their area, my area, and visit that particular shop is those funds that I was planning on using for new comic books. They're not, even if Diamond comes back and they finally say, even if Diamond comes back and finally says, yeah, we're going to do comics again, they're not going to say, well, here's out there and support your local comic book shop by buying those back issues, because there is a ton of gold out there in those back issue bins that we've kind of put off because we only got a certain amount in our comic book budget, and that brand new shiny object that hits the shelf called new comic book day every week takes all those funds. And so we really can't go back there, pool your money together and buy one of the back wall issues, one of the bigger issues. That would be great as well. And I told him that's what I plan to do. So I hope that others will do the same thing for this shop, but for other shops like mine that are out there. Because if they don't adapt, the sad thing about this guy is that he was more worried about the corona than he was about keeping the guy's shop open, even though that's the shop he works for the owner of the company and has for 14 plus years. Because I was like, man, you could be doing Instagram sales. You could be doing live auctions on YouTube. You could be doing eBay sales. You could be doing all this. Yeah, I know, but like, dude, you've got to adapt. So that's kind of the sad thing there. Hopefully other comic shops are not so lethargic and will get out there and do what it takes to stay open. And hopefully the comic book community as a whole will support those shops that are supporting them out there. Whether it's curbside service where they allow you to go in and out like mine does. Certain states are not as blessed as what we are here in Mississippi. Never thought I'd hear myself say that, but there are certain benefits to being in the South. And one of them is that government get off my back. And so I understand people need to exercise caution, but should it be the government that's exercising the caution for us? I mean, we're giving up our liberties in favor of supposed security. But when you walk to your mailbox, what happens if somebody just drove by with the window down, they hacked and coughed, and that stuff just spreads right to you? So you're never really safe. And giving up our independence to the government for supposed safety is not going to keep us safe, and certainly in the future is going to set a bad precedent. But I digress. Anyway, so I was rating some of the back issue bins and dove into some of the dollar bins and found coming tomorrow. So I'll be doing another one of these and revealing that. So I decided, since I had a few here and there, to go ahead and get Uncanny XMen. Exactly. Flashback to the Patriot Act. And, the crazy thing, Agu, about that is people were decrying, like George Bush, like, dude, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? You crazy. You're overreacting. And George Bush is like, well, hey, I'm not going to do anything bad for the country. I don't guess he did. But what about the person after him or the person after him? You might do it okay, but now that the precedent's set, there's no stopping this. Once Pandora's box is open, it's open. There's no shutting it. So, anyway, yeah. So I decided to go and get volumes 2 and 3 and 4. There's no 5 because when they came back out after Hickman's run, let's say 2. So this is 2, that's 3, and 4 was the one they did right before it. So there's no 5 because X-Men is just X-Men, which I've got all those. And I've got all of the what I refer to as the Jim Lee run. Used to that you was referred to as volume 2 of X-Men, but that's not how CLZ, which is the way I catalog all my stuff. That's not how they refer to it. They refer to it as X-Men volume 1 because there's a couple of X-Men volumes after that. So I guess I refer to it that way too. So all of the Uncanny, I'm just going to get all of the Uncanny X-Men volumes. So this is volume 2, number 2, Mr. Sinister acting all suave, like he wants to go get Miss Sinister and say, hey, baby, what's going on? Check that red diamond out. Major here. So I argued for apples one day and oranges the following day. yeah, for sure. Then Uncanny X-Men number 4, back when Colossus had the jewel that makes Juggernaut the Juggernaut. Number 4, little Greg Land action. I'm not a big Greg Land fan. I know a lot of people are. I just think his work is kind of bland. There are a lot of YouTube videos out there that people look at and they go, okay, he's copying off of porn stars, no less. But, he hits and miss. Uncanny X-Men number 6. This is all with volume 2. I think he did most of the artwork for this series. That is number 7. And number 8. And number 10. A little Kubert action there on the front cover of that one. And then this is volume 3, I believe. This is into the Inhumans versus the X-Men. This is number 16. Little Marvel Girl and Phantom X action on the front cover. This is the X-Men annual number 1. Really wasn't planning to pick this up, but when I saw the Brooks cover, say can't pass it up, man. Brooks goodness. Mark Brooks is, a genius when it comes to those brush strokes. The House of X, Powers of 10 covers that he did were the favorite of them all, the connecting covers. I get his on the Fantastic Four, X-Men stuff. So I pick up a lot of his stuff. Just picked up some of his Batman. I think it was in Detective, but Batman stuff. This is the Bendis run. Again, Bendis does have his point. His writing on Uncanny X-Men was a little iffy. It's okay. Certainly better than what he's doing with Superman right now. But that's number 28. Got to throw a little Valiant goodness in here when you're talking about dollar bins and you're talking about me, and that's the Eternal Warrior yearbook. This is yearbook number 1, which I have all of the Eternal Warrior volume 1. So from the 90s, all of the Eternal Warriors. I have all of the hardcore. I have all of the Rye. I need 1 to complete my whole run of Magnus. I need 2 to complete my whole run of Bloodshot volume 1. And Harbinger, I got a lot of those, and the Exo, I got a lot of those. But so yeah, I really dig the 90s Valiant stuff. That was an era of comics. Unfortunately, they were at the end. They were at the top of that era, and when things came crashing down, they fell apart. But that was some good writing and some good work. Jim Shooter, as much as people hated him, ran a tight ship, and he came over there, and he was the guy that got Marvel in line with Secret Wars and those type of things. And then when he left Marvel, he started Valiant, and he brought, as much as those people hated him, he still pulled Frank Miller and Simonson covers on those Unity covers that they had. I mean, really good writing. Shooter, Bob Layton, all these people in the industry that everybody knew. They were writing good stuff and they were coming up with new characters. That's an amazing thing. In today's world, they can't come up with new characters. Every new character that comes out, I'm trying to think of one that's not a spin-off of something else. Love the Batman Who Laughs, but what's he a spin-off of? She-Hulk, Wolverine, X-23. So, how about just making a new character and they might have similar powers? Like say Polaris as an example. So Polaris has magnetic powers. They've written her to now be the daughter of Magneto. At one time that wasn't the case, but they wrote her to be the daughter of Magneto, and that's fine. But she's her own person, right? She wasn't at one time the daughter of Magneto. They might have similar powers, but and similar skill sets, maybe similar background, but they're not the same character. They have their own little spin. And so quit trying to reinvent the character or doing a spin-off of that same character. Hey, let's just do something different. Really don't have much of that anymore. But you had that at Valiant. So Valiant, as I mentioned earlier, I think it was one of the biggest universes that has the most disappointment, because when they revitalized everything in 2012, they were doing so great that they got sold off. And when they got sold off, the new company that came in said, we're really not worried about comic books. We're really worried about movie and intellectual property. And that's what we're going to push towards. And so they brought people in there and they got rid of everybody and brought in all these people that really just knew about movies or pushed things towards movies. They really didn't have the fan base. Marvel can do something similar to that, but they got the fan base. They've got years and years of people buying their comic books, parents and grandparents buying their comic books, so they can kind of afford to do that. Valiant really didn't have that, so things went downhill, and they've really just started kicking their stuff back up. Time will tell, especially in the middle of this Corona/Diamond deal, if they'll continue on. Who knows? Jenica is She-Hulk, blood transfusion. Yeah, exactly. She is. And she's a turtle. So how about some other creature in the turtle world, right? And she's got her Wolverine claws. But so yeah, why not come up with a new deal? And me and the guy that worked at the comic book shop, we were talking about this today. I really think, and hey, it's easy for me to say because I'm an armchair quarterback. I'm just sitting here chilling and I'm coming up with all these great ideas. At least I think they are. And, all these big executives are making the decisions that they make, and they get paid a lot of money to make them, good or bad. But really, I think that corporations, Marvel and DC mainly, are looking at this all wrong. Comic books are a small part of the bottom line, and they want them to make money. Well, that kind of makes sense. If comic books was your only game, if you're Image, if you're Valiant, aside from the Bloodshot movie, if you're Image, if you're one of Scout Comics, Aftershocks, any of these people, all you've got is your comic books. So you've got to make money on them. All right. So with Marvel and DC, that's not the case. What they do really good at is taking that intellectual property and milking it for everything it's worth. They do movies, good or bad, do merchandising and all these other kind of things. They're really missing the boat, because the problem is not that comics aren't making money. They're not using comics as advertising. Really, the new comic books that you get today are really nothing but advertising. They're really. You should be putting all kinds of new stories out there. People look at what they pay for a billboard and say, oh, I got to make money on that billboard? No, they go, that billboard is going to enlighten people to my product or services, and it's just the cost of doing business of me putting that up there. They should view comics much the same way. If they view comics much the same way, they could go down to $2.99. Oh, which, by the way, I'm not a Spawn fan. Not really a big McFarlane fan, but I will give him kudos where he needs it, and that is the man knows how to do business, and he's still selling the Spawn after all this time at $2.99 an issue. Now, if Spawn can be sold at $2.99 an issue. We know McFarlane's too smart of a business guy to be going in the hole on it. You know he's still making money. So if he can make money at $2.99 an issue, why do we have to have $3.99, $4.99, or having a cotton picking #1 Wolverine at $8.99 or whatever the cost of those things were? Why? It's just a money grab. But they're really shooting themselves in the foot, because what happens is those people that go out there, $2.99 would be awesome, right? What happened to DC's logo? Hold the line at $2.99. Yeah, right. But what if DC said, hey, look, we're going to show Marvel what's up. We're going to go out there, because this is what DC needs. DC needs a rebirth, not in the comics, but in marketing and the movies and those things like that. This is what DC needs. So they need people to buy those comic books, because that's advertising. Okay. They're going to get in there, and because if you set the bar and the barrier of entry too high, kids that have allowances are not going to go out there and buy that expensive paper anymore. You want that kid to buy 2 comic books instead of 1 comic book. So if you make it cheaper, and the kid's looking at these, and let's pretend these characters are not related any. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? But these kids are not related. These characters are not related any at all. And so the kid walks up, and he's got enough money because of the price of the comic books for 1 comic book. So he buys that comic book, and it's the comic book he's always liked this character. He knows a lot about this character, so he feels like it's a pretty safe buy. This one over here, he goes, well, I don't have enough money for it. I don't know nothing about that character. It kind of looks cool, but I really hate to waste my money on something that's starting out that I don't know anything about, right? And so what happens is this one sits over here on the shelf, because it becomes an either-or situation. Well, the kid's already sold on this character. So DC needs to want them to keep being sold on that character. What DC needs is, let's say the Joker was a new character, DC needs to get people involved so heavily in this character that when they finally put him on the movie screen, or finally start selling T-shirts, or finally start doing video games, whatever the case is, that they go, oh, that's that new comic book I picked up. That's awesome. Let me do that. Could lose money or break even on the comic books, because all it is advertising. Advertising, people. This is what's getting your people to the movie theaters. This is what's getting people into the toy aisles. This is what's getting the next generation, all these different things. And if you set the barrier of entry too high, because think about this, if myself or anybody else that's about my age would have gone to the newsstand, at the local 7-Eleven, at the grocery store, wherever we used to always get our comic books from, and they were, $3.99. How many comic books could I have really picked up? When they were $1, I got all kinds of garbage, and that was fine, because I'm getting, instead of $3.99, and you can't tell me the paper quality is better. Like the DC Black Label is a little bit better, but for the most part, they're not any better for what they're charging. But at $3.99, I could have got 4 books, and 3 of them might have been crap, and I would have been okay with that, because I had 4 stories to read, and if 3 of them that I took a risk on were crap, that's fine. I could have taken a risk on anything. So I never would have gotten into all the other characters that I eventually moved on into. And so then one day when they come out with all this different marketing materials, I can't go, oh man, I read that when I was a kid. They're really missing the boat. They're really missing the boat, because it's not about making money on these little pieces of floppy paper. It's about getting people sold on the character to tell the bigger story where they make the most money at. It's advertising, pure and simple. They pay for Google for a click and play. Hello, they're not losing money on the dollar comics, Agu, right? They're putting those dollar comics. People say, well, it's a different quality paper. Bull, baloney. I'm getting the dollar comics. I'm okay with the dollar comics quality of paper. So let's pretend that they are losing money at $1. Let's pretend that the dollar is the break-even point. And I know that in this day and age, it would be hard for a shop to really, they would have to move a lot of material to make it with comics being $1. But that aside, let's pretend $1 is their break even. They broke even. They did exactly what I said. But what happened? People went out there and go to those dollar things every time they come out, and you pick up 5 or 6 stories. You could go read them digitally. You choose not to. And so that's what they have to do, and that's what they could do. And if DC wanted to really, because Marvel's already got the cinematic universe down pat. They got their thing going on. DC wanted to say, hey, we can't really make a good movie right now because we don't have all our juices flowing. Let's get people sold on DC as a brand. Let's get people sold on DC as characters. And the way we can do that is by making our comics cheaper than everybody else's from the standpoint of price per monthly book. Not cheaper in writing. They do that with Bendis' Superman. It should be crime. It should be punishable by death that you take an iconic, and I'm not really a Superman fan, but it should be punishable by death that somebody take an iconic character like Superman and drag him through the mud like he does. Free comic book day costs the stores 25 cents, so there's room to make $2.99 on a comic. Exactly. Hello. Cost them 25 cents, and they're paying shipping. And case in point, the shop that I go to, look how thick those books are. And they put these things out for free every single month. And he was telling me, he said, DC, they only give us like a handful. Marvel like bombards us with this big, thick book that only nerds like me are going to keep. And look how thick that book is. How much did that cost Marvel? But they're not worried about it. Why? Because it's advertising to the consumer. Why can't this, and I know they got to pay writers and all that other kind of stuff, but why couldn't this be the same thought process behind this? Just one of my ramblings, as it were. So this past week, I was able to complete my X-Men, Uncanny X-Men #1 run. And so the two books that I needed were Uncanny X-Men #4 and #1. I actually pulled the trigger on #1, and then I said, oh, what the crap? Go ahead and get #4 as well. So #4 is the first appearance of Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, the Hood of Evil Mutants, aside from Magneto, who issue 1 was. So I kind of caught a little bit on the books because pricing and just wanting to complete the run, and I might go back later and upgrade, but I can say I have them all. So this was one of those compromises because of Scarlet Witch and all them's first appearances. It was kind of one of the more pricier books, and so I got it. I've got one of those reproduction covers coming. It'll be here next week. So the #1 is the same way. It is coverless. It is naked right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the reproduction cover on it. I have already found out. I contacted CGC and asked them how they would grade it, because if they even graded it with a purple label, that would be fine to me. You have a little higher grade, but it's a purple label. Who cares? It's mine. That's all I'm worried about. But they said that they would not grade it as a purple label. They would grade it as a regular label, but no grade. It would be NG. So I'm like, oh, that sucks. PGX, on the other hand, said that they would grade it a 0.5, which I guess is fair enough, but it would be a regular label, whatever. So that's the way I'm going to go. And that's really more presentation purposes and preservation purposes more than anything. It's not really resale value. And so I can get it done, pretty cheap with PGX. And if I decide to grade, if it being graded, I probably would get more for it than I would just with the cover slapped onto it, just like that. If I decided to sell it, or when I decided to sell it, if I wanted to upgrade. So that's a consideration too. So that's the route that I'm going to go. But yes, Uncanny X-Men #4, and stopped and came by. Says your connection's unstable. Okay, here we go. Yeah, and I don't understand that, Agu, because it's like, okay, no grade for a single page. Okay, I understand that, but I got the whole picking comic book. There's nothing wrong with it aside it doesn't have a cover. I could probably try to do a little Frankenstein surgery and pull the staples out and attach them through that. I wonder if I get a purple grade like that, but a purple label like that, and actually get it graded. So I really don't understand the deal with the no grade, and that might be somebody that really didn't know what they were talking about at CGC, because in the past, before the Corona deal, they were always quick to answer the phone. Now you got to leave them a message or email them. But surprising news with CGC. My book that went to get pressed and graded is finally making it to the grading table. It's only been since the end of October, and we're here at the end of March. So that's a good turnaround time, right? Well, all those people that paid that extra money to get the Todd McFarlane's pressings and signings, they got in front of me. And yeah, so that's my one gripe with CGC is the pressing. It just takes too cotton picking long. It makes sense to get a perfect intact book minus the cover. I'd take a 60s Batman and looks like that. Yeah, just to say you got it, right? It's just like, man, this is something. I mean, and man, what was amazing when I started looking at some of these coverless covers, because coverless books, rather, coverless covers. Coverless books was like, good grief, these things are still expensive. I mean, I still paid a mint, not a mint as much as it would have been had I had the cover on it, mind you, but still paid a mint for that Uncanny X-Men #1. And I mean, I looked around and shopped around and fished around to try to find the best deal, and this one was in line with everywhere else. And so I was like, wow, okay, well. And this was a guy that I had contacted and tried to lowball him. He wouldn't quite meet me where I wanted to a month ago. So I contacted him back, said, hey, you thought any more about it? So he came down some more, and he was about $30 from where I wanted to be. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger, and it is en route to us now, hopefully Corona free. But yeah. Look, I was looking at JP's budget collecting. He picked up a Batman first cover appearance, I believe, of Catwoman. Man, that was a nice looking cover. So now I'm looking at Golden Age Batman. Ugh, if it ain't one thing, it's another. But that's one of the good things about New Comic Book Day being non-existent now. You can catch up on reading, you can catch up on your back issues, and you can put some money towards some bigger books this year, which were all part of my goals. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Like I said before, hopefully the comic shops that need to will survive this deal, and Diamond too, because I've heard Diamond wasn't really in the best financial shape. So, whether they bounce back from this, maybe it's a chance for somebody else to get into the game. Wouldn't it be something if the people at Image, like Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, who said, hey, I'm going to draw the line in the sand. I'm going to continue to do Savage Dragon books, but I'm not putting them out to digital before the print hits the shelves. So hopefully other creators will take that line in the sand approach. And if McFarlane bought Diamond out, wouldn't that be something? Because then he essentially runs Marvel's distribution services. So he can say, hey, up yours, Marvel. I'm sure he would love that. But so I really appreciate everybody watching this live or watching this on the rewind. In either case, hopefully you're staying healthy out there. Hopefully you were able to pick up some new comic books, and hopefully your shop will be there after all this is gone. Please remember to support your local shop during this time if you're able to, and if the comic book shop is indeed still open. If you haven't already done so, please hit that like and that subscribe button and share the channel. It's one of the good things about this whole deal. I guess more people are watching YouTube, and I've been picking up some subscribers as a result. And so really appreciate everybody that has subscribed to the channel. And as you might already be aware of, we are doing a 400 subscriber giveaway pretty soon. Well, hopefully pretty soon. But we are inching up towards that, and we'll probably have one for the 300 that I haven't announced yet. But if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and go to the 400 subscriber giveaway. And all you got to do is be 18 years or older. You don't have to be a resident of the United States. And you have to enter into the comments, I want to win or I want to win. And you can watch the video and find out what is available for you to possibly win. But that's all you got to do. And be subscribed to the channel. And share that out, because the quicker we get to 400, the quicker we will be giving that away, and you might have a chance to win it yourself. So with that said, everybody take care. everybody go pick up some good comic books, turn off the mainstream media, and forget all this chaos for a little while and dive into some good reading and some good artwork. Till next time, keep reading and keep collecting. Adios.